Welcome back, everybody. This is the Sports File, a 35-year reboot, and this is episode number 16. Today's topics include, let's recap the Denver Broncos' last couple games with Bo Nix at the helm. We'll talk about the Tottenham Hotspurs, kind of where they've been headed over the last couple weeks. There's some good and some bad. Quickly touch on the Harris versus Trump presidential election. We'll check in on the polls and what's been happening this week. And then we'll round it out by talking about Hermosa Beach. First topic, the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix continues to impress, I would say. He's getting better and better each week. His progress, it's really, really taken off. So when we last recorded, they had started off 0-2. Again, not much of a surprise. I think expectations were fairly low this year on the Denver Broncos. And he's gradually improved. He really had a solid game at the Buccaneers back on September 22nd. He threw for over 200 yards passing. In fact, he had 216 yards passing. Completions percentage was his highest to date for the year at 69.4%. Going into that game. The Jets, then they went to the Jets and they actually beat the Jets on the road. So back-to-back games. They beat Tampa on the road. They stayed on the East Coast in West Virginia. And then they went and played the New York Jets at Giant Stadium there. Or MetLife Stadium, as it's called now. They beat the Jets pretty good. He ended up getting his first passing touchdown. Had a passer rating of 67.9. Completion percentage was down, but this was a run-heavy game. Kind of an ugly game, honestly. The weather was terrible. Aaron Rodgers played terrible. Across the board, just a real boring football game. And then they came back home October 6th last week versus the Raiders. And this was Bo. Bo really had a great game here. His QB rating skyrocketed up to 117.2. Threw for 206 yards, 70% completion percentage accuracy at 70.4, plus 2 touchdowns. Really, really did a solid showing. Broncos continue to improve. Looks his career stats right now, or he's at 866 yards on the year, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a rating of 71.4 and 61.8. I think the key thing to note with Bo is you're really starting to see him mature and really growing. He's improving week over week now, really growing into the role. I remember the first game, it was the infamous deer in the headlights. I think the game was incredibly fast. He was now playing against the ones. He's now looked like he's come such a long way since the first game. He's really, really looking pretty good out there as we speak. He's progressing as far as all the rookies. I looked up some stats here where they are. So let's think about the rookies. You've got Caleb Williams, who's the number 1 overall draft pick. He's kind of doing the same thing Bo's doing. The first week it was a little messy. He's at a 62.9% completion rate on the year. He's obviously played in all 5 games. He's thrown for over close to 1,100 yards right now, so throwing it a lot more than Bo. But pretty much similar stats. He's got 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, where Bo has three TDs and 4 interceptions. I'd say that going away, the rookie of the year probably is going to be Jaden Daniels. Washington Commanders have hit an absolute home run with him. This kid looks like the real deal already. He's passing percentage is at 77.1. He's thrown for just over 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Washington is just a strong team. It's amazing what a team looks like when they get a really good quarterback, and they've found it with Jaden Daniels. Be a big week this week coming up for Drake May. He's coming finally. New England woke up and realized Jacoby Brissett was not the answer. I think that everybody else but New England Patriots knew that. So now they're going to finally put Drake May out there, and we'll see what he's doing. Michael Penix, the other big draft pick, he's obviously the backup to Kirk Cousins, so he's not going to be playing anytime soon, barring injury. Broncos take on the Los Angeles, I almost said San Diego, which I sort of did, but they're the Los Angeles Chargers are coming into town. Herbert's back playing. Latest line I saw was the Chargers are getting 3 points versus the Broncos. I'm going to make a prediction. We'll start doing this every week too. I think you're going to see the Denver Broncos kind of win this thing. I think the Denver Broncos defense is for real. It's a top 2. I think it's the second-rated defense or third-rated defense in the league right now. They've just been playing amazing, and it's great comeback for Vance Joseph, who used to be the head coach here, to come back, and he's just such a great defensive coordinator. I'm going to call this game at something like 23, let's call it 23-17. The Denver Broncos will upset the Chargers. And then let's quickly look at where that leads them for the rest of the year, because I think they have an actual chance here now to keep their winning streak going as I quickly type in their schedule. Yep, so we've got the Chargers. They're at home versus the Chargers. Let's call that a win. Hopefully that'll make the Broncos then at that point 4-2. The Broncos then go to the Saints on a Thursday night. This is a tricky game in my eyes. It's probably a toss-up in all honesty. I think you're facing the former coach Dennis Allen of the Broncos back when they were going to the Super Bowls. He's head coach at the Saints. It's a homecoming for Peyton, but short week, very little practice at all. Then you got to travel to New Orleans. It's always a little dicey. This very well could be a loss. But then you've got the Panthers. They're at the Panthers. Broncos should beat the Panthers. I think the Panthers are a complete mess. Poor Bryce Young is going to go down as, obviously, it should not have been taken number 1 overall, considering what C.J. Stroud has been doing. So I think they can do that. So let's call them. They'll be, 4-2. Then they'll be 4-3. After the Panthers, they literally could be 5-3. And if you remember that infamous over-under line for total wins was 5.5, the Broncos are already going to be at 5 wins as of October 27th. All right, that's the Denver Broncos. Next topic is the Tottenham Hotspurs. What a frustrating game on Sunday with the Tottenham Hotspurs versus Brighton. They had them put away, literally. They were up 2-0. This new formation that Ange is running, this is really kind of like an aggressive formation where he's got essentially 5 attacking players up front. You've got Solanke in the middle. You've got Son out on the left wing. On the right wing, you've got Brenny Johnson. Then he's moved Kulusevski back to pair him up with James Madison. And Kulo has just been, I think, phenomenal in this role. So you've really got 5 attackmen up there. Sonny was out. They played Werner instead. He had a pretty good game. I like this aggression right here. They're fast, incredibly fast. The pace that they have for play is great to see. It's a very attacking formation, and they also play that high defensive line, which can expose them somewhat. The first half, it was just a phenomenal first half of soccer for the Hotspurs. They really were attacking. They had a ton of chances. And they just could not put it away. If I'm looking at it here, we had goals by Brenny Johnson, 23 minutes in, followed by James Madison at 37 minutes in. Brighton was definitely getting some chances because of this defensive high line that they seemingly play all the time. And they were, very like-minded, I think, aggression, 2 aggressive teams going at it. They had a few chances in the first half. But if you were to look at just the stats here, we pull this up. Shots on net by the Spurs, they had 13 shots that were on target, only 3. Where Brighton had 11 shots on target were 4. Spurs dominated possession in this game, 59%. Passes, they were at 526 versus 364. Their passing accuracy was just shy of 90%. They were playing really, really well. And then in the second half, they just totally laid an egg. No energy. It just looked like they wanted to be anywhere but there. It reminded me so much of these old Tottenham teams where this is a game that you really got to put away. You've really got to start putting games like this away. I don't think Brighton's not a bad team either. They're definitely like a top 12 team for sure. As I look up the standings here quickly on the fly, we're looking at Brighton now they're all the way up 6. Now it's early, right? But they're definitely a top 12 team. Tottenham's ranked 9th. But Tottenham, as the announcers are saying, is a top 6 club in this league, which they are. You've got to put these guys away. You can't allow for Brighton to come back into a game when you're up 2-0 at halftime, and then in the next 45 minutes you allow 3 goals to lose. Ange was, his comments after the game were really telling as well. Totally frustrated. He said, in the 2 years, in my second season coaching this team, it's just something I'm not familiar with. Seeing what this team did, where they just did not respond at all. He was so disappointed in the output. Players came out on their social accounts. James Madison, for example, said, that was no excuses. That was unacceptable, our play in the second half. And again, if you want to get into Champions League, which is the goal, top 4, you've got to put these games away. They should have been put away, and it wasn't. But again, I think the big takeaway for me has been this new formation that we've chatted about, this 5 essentially players playing up front in an attacking formation. With the pace they have, it makes for an exciting soccer to watch. Years past, like under Conte, it was rather boring because it was much more defensive. This is just pure passing and offense all the time. So Hotspurs are currently on a break right now. The international break has arrived while they're doing stuff like the Nations League. So the players went back to their respective teams. Next match, Saturday, October 19th. So we've got another weekish or so as I record this on Friday, the 11th. It's first West Ham. We'll see where this thing ends up. They are at home. This should be a W, hopefully, but West Ham is a tough club as well. Right now, the win probability is saying Tottenham wins 65%. West Ham has a 17% chance of winning, and a draw is 18%. So you got to win this game. After that, we're going to have they're going to go back to their Europa League, which they've been dominating. They've got AZ Aklamar on Thursday the 24th. And then the 27th, they've got Crystal Palace. These, again, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brighton, all top 12 teams. But you've really got to win these next 2 games to get yourself back up there in the standings. And then it really doesn't get easier. After the 27th versus Crystal Palace, they're turning around in a short week. They go to their EFL Cup round of 16, which is now the knockout round, and they're playing Man City. And this is Tottenham's big chance to win a cup, is probably the EFL. We'll see how serious Man City takes it. Usually they do under Pep. But, this is sort of a tough little stretch. We got West Ham, AZ Aklamar is probably the easiest. You'll see a ton of backups playing in that. And then they got Crystal Palace followed by Man City. Entering a tough stretch. But hopefully the Tottenham Hotspurs can get back to normal and get back to playing the way they've been playing earlier in the year. All right, topic number 3. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump for the presidential election. We're down to less than a month to go, and the blitz is on. This week we saw Kamala really make the rounds with interviews. She had interviews with 60 Minutes. She went on The View, went on the Stephen Colbert Show. She also did the Call Her Daddy podcast. Really, really making the rounds at this point. She also did Howard Stern as well. So hitting all mediums, right? TV shows, podcasting, radio. And she really, I thought she did, these interviews, they're all fine. I mean, I think everybody was making such a big deal. What would she be like during these? She came out fine. Was reading or listening to another podcast today that I listened to, Pivot, with Kara and Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher. It's mainly focused on tech and business, but they were talking about, this blitz, this media blitz that she went on this week, and I tend to agree. And it was more surprising when she said it. I mean, I think they, a lot of criticism. Why would you go on Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper? I mean, I think honestly, it's a smart thing to do. It's, I think, the number 1 podcast for women right now. If it's not, it's in the top 3, but I'm pretty sure it's number 1. And Call Her Daddy podcast is a top 5 overall podcast. There were times when you had Joe Rogan and then Call Her Daddy right after it. You think about the media blitz she went on. I mean, she just, out of all the mediums that she did when we talked about Stephen Colbert or Howard Stern or The View or 60 Minutes or Call Her Daddy, when the numbers came back this week, the most listened or most watched was Call Her Daddy. More people tuned into that than watching The View or watching 60 Minutes, etc. So what that's doing is she's trying to reach out to the younger generation. I think Alex Cooper is maybe 30 at this point. But really has a huge following, the Daddy Gang, as she calls it. And Kamala went on there and really spoke about the women's issues, which, that's a lot of what Alex Cooper talks about on her podcast. And she just really laid it out why, what the differences between her versus him. We look at the polls here. Well, actually, before we look at the polls, we'll talk a little bit about the hurricane and this, this weird narrative that keeps coming up with the Trump campaign around FEMA and the $750 for these hurricane relief. You had Helene, and then you had Milton that hit, and just complete devastation through the southeast and Florida all the way up to North Carolina, Georgia. Really, really sad to see, but somehow or another this message got out there that, FEMA's not doing enough, that they're not answering, they're not there helping. You saw a lot, this $750 payment, which is just a lie. That's an initial payment that you can get right away to buy such things as groceries or stay in a motel or just to, get some meals in you. There's plenty of money left in that, and they'll just go through the process like everybody else of filing a claim, and they'll get their money. But what was interesting is, as the Trump campaign is banging on these states saying, they're not doing anything, they're not doing this, there's no money, they're not helping out, these people are catastrophic, it's a total failure of FEMA. You had Ron DeSantis from Florida coming out and saying, I don't know about that. All I know is every request I've put in has been approved, and they've been great to work with, the Biden administration. They've answered all our calls. The same with the governor in North Carolina. Same with the governor in Georgia. Said everything we've asked for has been approved, and we're getting all the help we need. And they keep checking in daily. Both times have said, you need anything at all, you call me directly. This being Biden to DeSantis, you need anything at all, just call me. So more disinformation. Trump's actually coming out here to Colorado today on Friday. He's going to quote unquote Aurora. I mean, that's kind of a stretch where he's actually at. I mean, this whole crazy Aurora nonsense with the gangs and all that's been going on. He's coming out here, and I'm sure he's going to say, I saw it and it's gross. He's speaking at the Gaylord Hotel, which I guess it's technically Aurora, that little area, but it's really right next to the Denver airport, which is part of Denver, where, what's really, if he really wants to get into Aurora, he's got to go another 30 minutes away to really get into Aurora to see what's going on. But as usual, he's not going to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what he says at his rally. I'm sure it'll be huge. They're not doing, FEMA's doing nothing. I saw Aurora, it was terrible, all this other stuff. So more to come. Polls. Let's see. We got a spread them up at my favorite site, Real Clear Politics. The average right now, we're looking at Harris plus 1.8. It's been kind of like this same spread. It bounced up earlier in the week to 2-1. So she's hovering in and around. She's always constantly between this, we'll call it 1.8 to 2.1. 2.2 was actually her highest on the spread. Both of them are kind of going back up again. She's polling at 49%. He's at 47.2. Again, he can't break up any higher than 47. He's always in this range. And her bottom, I'm going back to see when her bottom was when she passed him. Way back on August 5th, she was at 47%. So she's done nothing but rise. That's over almost 2.5 percentage points at one point. 2.4 percentage points was her high spread that she had. Some of the polls, these were last updated. Yeah, it's like early October. Some of them, like a lot of them, are ending in, October 6th was some polls. October 7th. October 9th is taking the average, there was nothing. There was Rasmussen did their latest poll, which has steadily been Trump this entire time. So he's got a 2 percentage line. Some of the polls have kind of stopped. The amount of polls have really stopped here. But you look at, I'll just do a sampling like I've been doing. Trump, Rasmussen, +2. Harris, Reuters is at +2. Morning Consult's probably the outlier. Harris +5. That seems a little high. New York Times, Harris +3. Emerson +1 for Harris. NPR +2 for Harris. Let's look at some of the key battleground states. Pennsylvania. This thing's going to come down to Pennsylvania. Saying he's right now plus 0.4%, so a half a percentage point, we'll call it. Michigan is Trump is up in that 0.9%. North Carolina, Trump is 0.5. Georgia is at 0.5. I mean, these are all right now leaning towards Trump's way. So we're going to see how this shakes out. Going to get into a prediction probably next week on where I think this is going to end up. So more to come next week when we record this after this weekend. All right, topic number 4. Hey, Hermosa Beach. My wife and I had the opportunity to go out to Hermosa Beach. We've been going out there now for 4 years. Started when my son, one of my sons, went out to college in California 4 years ago. Hard to believe he's now a senior, getting ready to graduate. And we started just spending like a long weekend down there in Hermosa Beach. If you're not familiar with the area, so it's in LA County. It's really about 20 minutes away from LAX south. They call it the South Bay area. You've got Redondo Beach, you've got Hermosa Beach, and then you've got Manhattan Beach. Really kind of beachy area. You go there, especially on the weekends. It's interesting to see that on like Saturday and Sunday, it's really busy. It's busy. But by Saturday night, it starts thinning out. So you see people, just the locals are around, and it's not as busy as it is from like Friday night, we'll call it, to kind of Sunday around noon. And we were out there from Saturday till Tuesday, visiting. My son was able to drive up from Orange County. We spent the day. We stayed at this place called the Beach House, which is right along the Strand. And for those that don't know what the Strand is essentially a sidewalk a huge sidewalk where you've got people biking, rollerblading, running, walking. It stretches the length. It goes on for a ways. You can go all the way down to Redondo Beach and further, all the way up past Manhattan Beach. So we think the furthest south is Redondo, then Hermosa, then Manhattan Beach. Then past that is like the kind of airport area, I'm calling it. And then you've got Marina Del Rey that's up there as well. So the beach house is right on the water there, essentially. So you have the Strand, which is that sidewalk, and then the beach. You look out at the Hermosa Beach Pier, which is beautiful. And it's just a great place to kind of go and chill out and unwind. We landed Saturday afternoon. The thing I love about Denver to LA is it's literally a 2-hour flight, and you gain an hour going there. So we took off at whenever it was. I think we took off around 10:30, and we landed. We were at the hotel by 12:30, which was amazing. We go to the spot for lunch called Martha's. They serve breakfast and lunch. They have just a killer turkey club, which is my kind of favorite sandwich in the world. They make homemade bread. Turkey club has your turkey, lettuce, tomato, bacon. Just a huge sandwich. My wife and I split it. My son, who came up and met us, we took him out for lunch, and then that night, then we were able to hang out, and then that night we went to an Italian restaurant in Manhattan Beach, which we hadn't been to, called Nando Trattoria. Cute place, small little restaurant, great Italian food, great little atmosphere. The front of house manager, or I don't think he was the owner, but you walk in and he just starts speaking Italian to me. And I don't speak Italian, so it was funny. And then he goes, "I'm going to give you the best seat in the house." And the table he sat us at it wasn't the best seat in the house. It was more of, I think, him, probably says it to everybody as they're coming in. It was a really cramped little restaurant. We were kind of jammed right in the middle of it, but the three of us sat there. Great homemade pastas. My son made a joke that after he was greeting everybody, for those of you who've watched The Sopranos, that the guy reminded him of Artie. Which is very true. The guy did kind of remind me of it. It's a dry sense of humor that my son has. All homemade pastas, great. I had this gnocchi with like a Yukon Gold potato served over like mashed cherry tomatoes with a little bit of cheese on it. It was just great. It just a really, really nice night. Went back to our place, the beach house. Before that, my sister-in-law recently had moved out to Hermosa Beach, so we met her. She was having some friends out. met her out for a drink along Hermosa Pier at one of the many different like little bars that they have there. Sun had came out, so it was beautiful. So we were able to do that. That was on Saturday. On Sunday, we hung out with my son in the morning, and then we were able to get him some lunch, and then said our goodbyes to him. Great seeing him as always. He drove back to Orange County, about a 50-minute drive back, and then we went out to dinner to a restaurant called the MB Post. They own a collection of restaurants. They own a steakhouse, MB Post. Then they own Fishing with Dynamite. MB Post is fine. It's like new American type food. I mean, nothing special, but it was great. My sister-in-law was able to meet us out for dinner. We were able to have a good time there and get a couple drinks, and then went back and called it a night. And then Monday morning, my wife and I got up. We rented some e-bikes, and we rode 16 miles all the way up to Marina Del Rey that I was talking about. Weather wasn't the best when we were out there. They call it the marine layer, which I think is kind of funny. It's a fancy word for fog, clouds and fog. And it typically burns off. It burned off every day around 3. We were able to do the bike ride, and then we went for lunch at that place, Fishing with Dynamite. Fishing with Dynamite is a great restaurant. Clearly there's some Boston or New England ties there. It's basically paying homage to all type of New England fishes and what you'd see. For example, I got the fish sandwich, which served the fish was a haddock, and that is something that you only see kind of in that New England, Massachusetts area, and it was excellent. And then their clam chowder, we've been there a bunch, Fishing with Time. It's one of our go-to spots in Manhattan Beach. Their clam chowder is the best New England clam chowder I've ever had. My wife got that. It was great. And then that night, we went to Nix. Nix is sort of, for the folks in Denver that are listening, it's sort of like a Hillstone, very similar vibe. Great little restaurant. We were able to go there, and it was great food. Really, really good food. I had a New York strip that was just done perfectly. Nice night again. And then Tuesday, we took off and headed back to Denver. So nice long week, and if you get a chance and you want to kind of quickly get away and get a beachy vibe with some nice weather, go check out Hermosa Beach in California. All right, that's been episode number 16 of The Sports File, a 35-year reboot. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcast, and I'll talk to you next week.